What's up everyone, welcome to Cinemateq, and today we're doing something a little different. We are going to react to a few classic trailers for films that were made by Alfred Hitchcock. We're going to start off with the trailer for Vertigo, some would say the best film ever made. Let's get into it. Dictionary. That's not something you really see in trailers anymore. Oh, I love this. Literally defining the name of the movie and what it means, just in case you weren't sure.
As created by Alfred Hitchcock in the story.
I think these were done by Sal Bass, these visuals, and that amazing classic name. Although I'm sure some people would disagree. Jimmy Stewart, Kim Novak, underappreciated. I feel like.
I don't want to die. There's someone inside me, and she says I must die.
I think it's really interesting how trailers from this period, just how they're structured differently from trailers that we see nowadays. We really get individual clips of scenes as opposed to very small snippets that are supposed to all work together and telling some kind of cohesive but smaller story. Scenes are really allowed to play out more in these classic trailers.
I look up.
Oh no, Jimmy Stewart. Oh, he looked down. He got vertigo.
What was the strange attraction that brought these two together in spite of the dark forces that tore them apart? The specter from the past that drew her to the ancient headstone in the mission graveyard. The compulsion that drove her relentlessly to the point of no return.
It's also kind of interesting the way that they reveal the story of the film, how you get almost the actor introductions and then you get a couple of scenes featuring both of them. And now we're getting basically a story progression, how the film goes point by point. And I think it's actually really interesting here that they kind of spoil the end of Vertigo by letting you know that Kim Novak comes back. If you haven't seen Vertigo, halfway through the film, she supposedly dies. They leave out her actual death in this, though, which is great. But they leave in her coming back after the fact and revealing who she is. And also the fact that she's playing two amazing roles, you can see right there. So I guess they weren't too concerned with spoilers back then. Which is strange considering this is a suspense film and Alfred Hitchcock is the master of suspense. Tangled web of terror. I love that. Oh no, Jimmy Stewart, are you going to have vertigo again? Oh, there it is actually, the vertigo shot, as it was coined because of this film. Ooh, in Technicolor and VistaVision. It's interesting comparing that trailer to the film itself. You do get a lot of the big plot points, but there's so much of the film and so much of the parts of the film that I think are held up for reasons that it is as good as it is are just completely left off. And I'm watching like a very perhaps low quality version of it. You all saw the version, the quality that I'm working with here. And it doesn't do justice to the cinematography in this film, which is so deep and luscious and just gorgeous. I know I try not to use that kind of language on this channel, but for a film like Vertigo, I feel like we almost have to. So we've started off strong with Vertigo. Now we're going to move on to a slightly older film. Vertigo's from 1958. We're going to go back in time to Rope, which came out in 1948, but also features Jimmy Stewart. Let's check it out. Actually, no, let's not check it out quite yet. I just want to preface one thing if you're not aware. Rope is meant to be a kind of one-shot film, very similar to 1917, except some of the edits are not really masked that well, and they actually are just shot reverse shot. I think in the entirety of the whole film, there's like 9, 10, maybe 11 edits for the whole thing. How you show that in a trailer, and if you lead audiences to believe or know that that's going to be the conceit of the film, I'm really interested to see if the trailer does that or plays with it in any interesting ways, or if they cut it more like a traditional trailer. But as I said, let's check it out. Ah, New York, one spring afternoon. How nice. Maybe it'll look that nice again one day, with people in Central Park.
I do want to. I just think we ought to wait till after you graduate.
I don't.
It's only a month.
Janet, a month.
Please.
Janet?
Sorry. I personally consider us engaged as of now. Congratulations.
I'm sure he would consider them engaged.
David, no.
Look, you can say yes in a taxi. I have a 2:30 appointment in
I'm
New York.
staying right here.
Oh, afraid you'll say yes?
Once again, getting a much longer full scene, really setting up everything you need to know for the rest of the trailer, almost as if it's a condensed version of the film, but then restructured and reordered in a very interesting way, which I guess is what trailers typically are, but this is just different.
Saw him alive. And that's the last time you'll ever see him alive.
Wait, oh, this isn't actually in the film.
What happened to David Kentley?
This is Jimmy Stewart talking directly to us. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I think this is something that happened a lot more in trailers way back then. but we still get that same kind of, if you think back to the structure of the last trailer, we're still getting this introduction of the characters, of all the people we're going to need to know for the film.
And the two who were responsible for everything.
Oh, they look guilty.
Brandon Shaw and Philip Morgan.
Looks very guilty, that Philip Morgan character. Ooh, that's a scream. So now this is actual footage from the film Rope. Ooh, he's pissed.
Mouse, cat and mouse. Which is the cat and which is the mouse?
I feel like this is from the later part of the film. But you can see here there actually are going with some edits to link certain scenes together. They're not like letting one long scene play out. And they're also not really letting much of the vocals come through. Like there's not a lot of people talking in this.
He knows. He knows. He knows. All right, he knows. Easy. I'll take care of you.
Actually, this is the end of the film, as far as I can recall. Is this the climax of the movie? It's been a few years since I've seen Rope, but I'm almost positive that this comes at the end of the film. Either that or it's the very opening scene, but I kind of doubt that. Wow, okay. That's an interesting trailer. As I said before, it is meant to be a one-shot, one-take kind of movie. It's supposed to look like that in any case. They didn't really give any indication of that in the trailer. At least I hope that they didn't. If I was talking while watching and not reading, maybe that was actually said. But from the best I could tell, they didn't really allude to it or let you know that that is how the film was going to be. They told you that it's Alfred Hitchcock's most startling suspense or most shocking suspense film ever made, which up until that point might have actually been true, although he did have a couple of really good ones in the early 40s. Overall, interesting how they lay it out, that they give you all of the characters and then only really show them in a wide shot beyond that, and then really focus on what I think is the end of the film. As far as getting people in to see the film, yeah, I can see that working. But if you show up thinking that there's going to be a lot of this kind of stuff, and you end up seeing the film as it actually is, which is, I believe, if I remember correctly, a dinner party that basically goes on for the 90-minute runtime of the film, then you might be a little disappointed. But Alfred Hitchcock is so good that he is able to just slowly ramp up the tension over the entirety of the film, which is pretty cool to see. So now we're going to go into a trailer that is very different, and it's actually much longer. Alfred Hitchcock did a few of these, and I will say that I have seen this one before, but I think it's worth talking about just as we watch it. It's the trailer for Psycho, which I can't imagine was ever shown on TV as we would expect a trailer to be, because it's about 5.5, 6 minutes long. And the whole thing, well, I mean, you're going to see. Let's just watch the thing. Let's just watch it together, and I can talk about it while it's going on. But it's a very different kind of promotional material for a film. The link I'm clicking on says it's a theatrical trailer. So imagine watching this before another film in like 1959 or early 1960. The fabulous Mr. Alfred Hitchcock is about to escort you, me, on a tour of the location of his next new motion picture, Psycho.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Here we have a quiet little motel.
Is it quiet, Alfred?
Way off the main highway. And as you see,
I love
perfectly harmless looking. When in fact, it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
Oh my goodness.
This motel also has, as an adjunct...
Also, I don't want to do a lot of pausing during these trailers. I kind of want to let them play out. But just imagine, like, this is not necessarily a cheaply done thing. They just used a crane shot and they're continuing on. And Alfred Hitchcock knows that he has to start here and end here. He is on different spots. Like, this is a very deliberate, very put together kind of promotional material, a very deliberate kind of trailer.
I think we can go inside because the place is up for sale. Although I don't know who's going to buy it now.
Now we're inspecting the house.
Floor, the single one in front. That's where the woman was first seen.
The woman?
Let's go inside.
Could that be Mrs. Bates that he's referring to? The woman? Yeah, it's not a bad place.
You see, even in daylight, this place still looks a bit sinister.
It's true, Alfred.
Now, it was at the top of the...
Probably because you lit it that way.
that the second murder took place.
The second murder?
She came out of the door there and met the victim at the top. Of course, in a flash, there was the knife, and in no time, the victim tumbled and fell with a horrible crash. I think the back broke immediately and hit the floor.
I mean, that's a detail you don't even get from the
It's
film.
difficult to describe the way that the twisting of the well, it's...
I love this idea that Alfred Hitchcock, the person who basically came up with this idea and shot it, is like too grossed out to talk about the murder.
The victim, or should I say victims, hadn't any conception as to the type of people they would be confronted with in this house, especially the woman. She was the weirdest and the most... Well, let's go into her bedroom.
Into Mrs. Bates's room? Alfred, you are trespassing, my friend. I don't know if this is good.
Here's the woman's room. Still beautifully preserved.
Oh, I love that use of language. Beautifully preserved. If you've seen Psycho, you know why that's good.
And the imprint of her figure on the bed where she used to lay.
I guess they had really bad memory foam back then.
I think some of her clothes are still in this wardrobe.
Also going to the clothes. He's picking up very minute details from the film that, once you've seen the film, makes this trailer really interesting, but I can't imagine what it would be like watching it without having seen the film or without having heard about the film. A little look, a little glance at us, make sure that we're still there. Except for that very first shot, like the crane shot where he's up top, we've also been fairly subservient in viewpoint to him, which makes sense considering Hitchcock, I'm pretty sure, had a massive ego.
Going there because his favorite spot was the little parlor behind his office in the motel. Let's go down there.
Oh, we're going to the parlor. I just love him sneaking around in his very Hitchcockian
You
way.
had to feel sorry for him. After all, being dominated by an almost maniacal woman was enough to drive anyone to the extreme of, well, let's go in.
This also seems to be something that he does all throughout this, is that he gets to a certain point of being able to describe something and then he stops.
You call this his hideaway. His hobby, as you see, was taxidermy. Crow here.
Also, the music here starts to change. It gets a little bit more sinister.
An important scene took place in this room. There was a private supper here. And, oh, by the way,
I'm actually kind of
this
hungry.
picture has great significance because, let's go along to cabin number 1.
See, he keeps doing this, and I kind of love this, because in some instances he does talk about it. Like, he described the second murder as much as he felt comfortable with, but told you about the tumbling and the knife and the stabbing and the broken back. But for these other specific details, he's like, you know, why don't I just take you to that place instead? Or like, just leave it to your imagination.
All tidied up.
We also get some shots of the birds there on the right, which is another theme throughout the entire film.
The bathroom.
Ooh. And see, all of this has been leading us towards what you could consider to be the climax of the film, even though it takes place within like the first 35-ish minutes of the film.
Big difference.
Of course, it's the famous shower scene that we're talking about.
The whole place was, well, it's too horrible to describe. Dreadful. And I'll tell you, there's a very important clue was found here. Down there.
Imagine anyone else telling you that a very important clue was found here and then opening up a toilet, and you take them seriously. You don't.
Very slowly, of course, the shower was on, there was no sound. And
now he actually describes the lead up to the shower scene. And you actually get the shot of the initial scream. And just being able to cut that together, it's actually kind of interesting when you think about Psycho as a whole. The idea that Alfred Hitchcock in this trailer is the one who's pushing back the curtain and is in fact the one who's going to be doing the stabbing and all that kind of stuff. And when you think about Hitchcock was very well known for being a prick, a douchebag, a jerk to his female actresses. the idea that he's kind of outing himself with that particular shot as being potentially the person who's doing the stabbing, doing the killing of Janet Leigh in that scene is, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. Hitchcock himself did some other trailers like this. I was going through some other of his trailers when I was thinking about doing this video. He does something very similar for The Birds, and I just really like that style, how he's leading you throughout all of the different parts of the film. So when you actually are watching the film, you have somewhat of a familiarity with the geography of the world that you're in, outside of maybe the very first 10 minutes of the film when the lead actress, Marion Crane, I believe, is driving away from the city and then has to stop at the Bates Motel. So the motel and the house itself, you already have a pretty good geography for it. There are places that he left out though. I'm sure we've all seen Psycho at this point. He did not talk about the basement, for example, and he didn't really out the fact that Mrs. Bates, Norman's mother, is in fact dead. He hinted at it with the whole preserved remark when he went into her bedroom. But aside from that, there are still a lot of things that are left open for us. So those are 3 classic trailers for Alfred Hitchcock films. I'm really interested in doing this kind of video more often, so if you like this kind of trailer reaction, let me know. Hit me up in the comments, like the video, do all the things. And remember, you should be staying inside and washing your hands right now, so do those things. Don't go outside. Watch Alfred Hitchcock films instead. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.